Hurricane Fiona remains a very powerful Category 4 hurricane with 130-mile-an-hour winds this Wednesday evening, with still concerns that 98L could still develop by early next week in the northwestern Caribbean. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Weather United on this Wednesday evening, September 21st, 2022. Before I get started, I do ask really nicely that you do please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this video with your family and friends on social media. Here's the latest satellite imagery on Major Hurricane Fiona that remains a Category 4 with 130-mile-an-hour winds. Pressures are still quite low in the mid 930 millibar range, and we still have a pretty good eye that is trying to clear out still with a very intense central dense overcast with cloud tops colder than negative 80 degrees Celsius, primarily on the northern and western sides of the system. But as we can see here, it is pretty not well symmetrical at all. It is very asymmetrical, and that's what we have, this really lopsided look to the system because of the shear that we have over here. Take note of these cloud filaments really racing that shear in out of the westerly direction, going into the system, helping to shear it slightly at about 15 to 20 knots. When we take a look at the National Hurricane Center on their 5 o'clock advisory, by the time this video is out, there will be an 8 o'clock advisory. It could be stronger, it could be weaker. We just don't know yet, but it will be a Category 4 in their next advisory, I'm quite sure, as this continues to move off towards the north at about 9 miles an hour. Just a reminder, there are hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings on Bermuda. Nothing, of course, yet for the Nova Scotia area, but this is going to be a very, very life-threatening, dangerous extratropical cyclone when it fully transitions. Just because it's not a hurricane or not a hurricane related to the tropics, it is going to be a very strong post-extratropical cyclone when it transitions after it ends up being a major hurricane through 2 p.m. on Friday. Very intense. We're talking possibly 140-mile-an-hour winds still to come with this system, as it is still expected to peak intensity at about that level. So the most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds over Bermuda could arrive as early as Thursday, 8 p.m. So again, Thursday night, that is tomorrow night, you could be dealing with very strong tropical storm force, if not even hurricane force winds on the island. So yeah, Bermuda will not avoid this strike of this hurricane at all. You will get significant impacts such as wind, storm surge, high surf, and flooding, all expected on the small island of Bermuda. So if you haven't done it already, you need to make sure you are taking precautions, you're getting prepared, maybe some evacuations, because this would be the time to do it right now, unfortunately. And then by Friday night and early Saturday morning for Nova Scotia and for the Newfoundland and the Labrador up here, by Saturday night into early Sunday morning as a very strong extratropical storm after, again, it spins down gradually, but it's going to take time. This is going to be a very big monster going all the way up into the north portion of Canada. Here's a look at those hurricane force wind probabilities. Again, we are continuing with now a 5 to 10% chance of hurricane force winds. Those chances have actually come down, but do not let that fool you. Please take this with a grain of salt, because again, if this shifts just a little further to the east, these chances will go up significantly. So keep that in mind. But we have a pretty good idea that it will miss Bermuda completely. Well, that is the eye itself, the center, but you will get the impacts with that eastern wind field that is going to be slapping over your area of Bermuda by, again, Thursday night and early Friday morning. So hurricane conditions are possible and tropical storm conditions are expected on Bermuda by late tomorrow. Fiona is expected to affect portions of the Atlantic Canada as a very powerful hurricane force cyclone late Friday into Saturday, and could produce significant impacts from high winds, storm surge, and heavy rainfall. Interest in these areas should definitely monitor this progress of Fiona and updates to the forecast if necessary, because again, this could still jog just a little bit. As you can see here by the cone of uncertainty, this could go a little further east, this can go a little further west than what is on the forecast. So keep that in mind. As much as I would really like to still talk about Fiona, we cannot, because we're also keeping an eye on Invest 98L. That is now a big problem still in the forecasting books, that this could still have the potential for significant tropical development by the weekend into early next week. Not anytime soon, so that's good news. But when it gets into the northwestern Caribbean, it could develop significantly. So let's take a look at satellite imagery here, because we have a couple of things going on. The first thing, of course, we can see where the wave envelope is. We have southwesterly winds here. Winds are curling around, and we have more northeasterly winds on the western flank of this envelope of vorticity, or this wave axis that we have established. But we also have arcing bands of clouds. See these clouds, how they arc out like that? That means we're seeing strong thunderstorms. They collapse because we have dry air aloft. When that air is dry aloft, we get evaporational cooling. That evaporational cooling leads to strong outflow boundaries, and those are the arc clouds that we have. So there is dry air being fed into this because of the northerly shear, and this is not just typical northerly shear. This is actually outflow from Fiona hitting Invest 98L in the face from the north, and this is going to continue to implicate the forecast of 98L going forward, probably for the next 3 or 4 days, and then the pattern should change in favor for 98L, as it could significantly develop in a hurry in the northwestern Caribbean. So what are the trends on the EPS, or the European Prediction System ensemble forecast? And we can see this is the 850 cyclonic vorticity, 500 millibar height map, and 200 millibar wind forecast. So we have 3 layers plot on this map. Again, just to clarify, the vorticity is the color that you see. The height map contours are what you see in blue, and then the wind barbs that you see here is 200 millibar wind. Okay, so 3 in 1 kind of on the map that we're using in today's, or this evening's update. So going forward, here is 98L right here. So again, significant development of this system is not anticipated at least through the next 3 to even 4 days. So don't freak out. Let's not worry about this right away. But after that point, we could see significant develop due to the background state, but it's always changing. The models are always changing, so we'll have to wait and see how that all looks. All right, but we're going to compare a couple here, the European and the GFS ensemble. So again, in about 48 hours by Friday, September the 23rd, we can see where our vorticity maximum is here over this kind of throughout the Caribbean. But you can take note here, we have this outflow still hitting the system on the backside on the northeastern sector of the system. And so this is going to lead again to that shear that is going to continue as this subtropical tropospheric ridge to the north does not align well with the cyclone. Again, if you want a hurricane or a tropical storm to form, you need an anticyclone on top of the system. Outflow in all quadrants. The system needs to exhaust. It needs to breathe out. So the air at the surface is able to converge and breathe in, lift up, and then exhale that air out at 200 millibars. And so with this flow configuration, the system's not able to do that very well. And so we're left with a system that does not develop very quickly at all. But by the time we get into, say, day 5 on the European ensemble forecast by early next week, we can see the anticyclone is pretty well aligned. The shear is very light, and when I mean by light, we're not just looking at the 200 millibar flow, but we're also looking at the steering flow. And that's when the 500 millibar height map comes into hand. We have this ridge that is extended, and its tongue is over the southern portion of Florida that extends all the way out into the central Caribbean. And so the ending result is you get a steering flow that is southeasterly in line with this upper level vector flow at 200 millibars that is also out of the southeast. So we're really left with no shear at all, probably less than 5 or 10 knots, generally speaking, by early next week, so 5 days out. And so we're left with a significant possible development of a tropical storm here potentially hitting the western side of Cuba, because like so, we got the ridge here at 500 millibars. We have a trough to the north, so we got a lot going on here. We also have another ridge off into the western Gulf of Mexico, and so there's a weakness here. There's a void left behind because of this trough is dropping southward into the southeast, into the mid-Atlantic, and so we're left again with a weakness in the ridge here in the Gulf. So rather like it or not, this is probably going to end up turning northward eventually. I don't see this going very far west like Bonnie did, where it kind of goes into the eastern Pacific. I don't think that's going to happen because we have this trough that's going to be in the way, and that's going to weaken this ridge, or weaken at least the western flank and erode it, so we get a system that kind of turns towards right, or heads northward into the northwestern Caribbean, and then eventually into the Gulf of Mexico by the middle of next week. Now, as you know, I did go a little too far out here. I'm really trying to mitigate going beyond 6 or 7 days for many reasons, for accuracy purposes and for educational purposes as well. So on the GFS, this is the operational model, okay? This is not the ensemble, so I want to make that clear with you all that are watching this video. So again, like so, same characters, same players on the map. We have Major Hurricane Fiona with its outflow. You can see it right here at the 200 millibar level. It is shunting all the moisture with 98L to its southwest, and so again, we're really left with what you see on the map. If we go back to the satellite, this is very well sheared. You can even see it on the map with those Sears filaments moving in one direction. That's what we see here on the map in 24 hours. So going forward, the system does not develop in a hurry at all. In fact, the GFS actually has backed off in the last 3 or 4 model runs. It now shows that this may struggle now a little longer than what we first thought. May not develop now until beyond 6 days, perhaps. So this may or may develop, may not or may, yes, develop, we should say, at 1002 millibars. But again, take note, the flow is still out of the northeast here, but take note, after 3 days, it does try to abate. And so by day 5, by early next week, September the 26th, it is underneath this anticyclonic flow pattern in the upper troposphere. We got westerly winds here to the north. They curve around over the Dominican Republic, and they come out of the east to the south of the cyclone. So we're left with very light wind shear, not much upper level inhibitors that would prevent this from strengthening, and then we're left off by the time we go into early next week. By Wednesday and Thursday, this is going to be the furthest that I go out on the 200 millibar map, like so. We got this ellipse of high pressure aloft. Again, very optimal position. We don't have a lot of shear to contend with, but later down the road, maybe this shear gets pretty strong here in the northern Gulf, and this could get destroyed well before it makes landfall in the Gulf Coast states of the U.S. Again, what I just said does not mean it's going to happen. Please, for the love of God, I don't like using that word in this video, please take this with a grain of salt, because we have learned a lot that the GFS could be weaker on some runs, it could be stronger on some runs. This morning's run had it at 925 millibars in the Gulf of Mexico. Now it only has this literally at 954 millibars. There's your answer. 2 or 1 model run later, it's a lot weaker, miraculously. Doesn't mean it's going to be. I want to make that clear if you guys are ending up watching this video tonight, which most of you are. So on the HWRF model, we can see there's a moisture plot. Again, this is the more bullish run, I should say, because it is a hurricane train model, and we can see there's your moisture plot. Take note again with the shear that is coming in out of the northeast. No development with this system in the next 3 days or even in the next 5 days. But after we get past the 4.5 to 5 day period, this could significantly develop into a powerful hurricane potentially in 5 days. And again, that's 5 days. This is not 10 days. This is not 7 days. This is 5 days, and we could be dealing with a possible hurricane this far out. But very unlikely this scenario is actually going to happen, because, I mean, first of all, that shear has to really back off. Secondly, we have to increase the moisture throughout this envelope of energy. And third of all, the background state overall, it has to be conducive for this system to develop. All right, I'm not saying it won't now, but I'm saying it might just be a little harder for it to develop, just because, again, the state of the art, where it's at right now, what it looks like, what the models are interpreting this as. So significant development of the system does appear probable still within 5 to 7 days. Might tad that off just a little bit in this video. Probably not as alarming as some of the global models did show earlier, but still, nevertheless, we got to take this a little seriously. So still on the ECM, or not the ECMWF, what am I thinking? On the HWRF model, like so. Again, this northeasterly flow over the system still continues. We talked about that on the HWRF, and it picks it up really well. But look at the flow really abates. The upper level shear, we call it, really goes away, and then completely it goes crazy. In about 5.5 days, we get this outflow pattern that is very symmetrical, very intense, and we could again be dealing with a concerning system on our hands by the early to the middle of next week. Simple. It should be fine through the early part of this weekend. We should not have to worry much about this impacting anyone, thank goodness, but it could impact you by the middle to the end of next week, wherever you live, because yeah, we got portions there of Honduras, we got Belize, we got Playa del Carmen, we got western Cuba. We got a lot of areas here that could get impacted by this. All right, so we're not ignoring this, and that's probably going to be the state of the art of these videos going forward. We're really going to focus on 98L, as this really has my attention. So, how strong will Invest 98L go on our spaghetti plot, you may ask? Well, nothing really entertaining through the next 3 or 3.5 days. Good news, low-end tropical storm, we can handle that. At least it's not going to be like we thought it was going to be in that same time frame. You could all say thank you to Fiona. Even so, Fiona is a major hurricane. Its outflow is destructive to 98L. Otherwise, if Fiona was not where it was, maybe this thing would have taken off a lot more quickly. But nevertheless, day 4, most of the models indicate that this could be a Category 1 hurricane, and then maybe a major hurricane or a Category 2 in 5 days. Therefore, my intensity forecast is unchanged from the last one, and I am really on the low end of this intensity forecast throughout the entire 5-day forecast, and I only forecast this still to become a 40 to 45 mile an hour tropical storm through the 5.5 day mark. Even so, the background state is very favorable. I'm not quite confident yet to increase my intensity forecast. The track forecast is pretty much straightforward. Again, central and northwestern the Caribbean over the next 5 days. And right now, there's a lot of room of spread here between the models, because again, if it's weaker, it might head further south, or further west, I should say. If it's a lot stronger, or it's able to get momentum going a little bit more, maybe it gains latitude a little bit more quicker, and maybe it clips maybe Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, and might even impact western Cuba. So strength will matter a lot on this system, believe it or not. If it's stronger, it heads further west. If it's weaker to begin with, maybe it heads further north. It gains latitude a lot more quicker. If you found this weather information very helpful, make sure you smash the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future updates. But anyways, I will see you in the next one. Peace!